Hello quilty friends and welcome back to my channel. My name's Rachel and I make videos about quilting and my creative life, and today I wanted to come on with the next instalment of the Tilda Campervan Quilt. About a month ago or so I shared a video of the completed quilt top and the making process, so if you haven't caught that video I'll leave the link to it down in the description box below. But since then I've been hand quilting the quilt and I wanted to share with you the design that I've picked to do that, the tools that I've been using for the hand quilting, and then hopefully towards the end of the video I'll have a quilted quilt to show you. It won't be bound, we know that won't happen in this video. It'll be quilted or very nearly finished, let's say. Now the backing that I chose for the quilt, it is a Tilda fabric, but it's from the Creating Memories range. I think it's from the winter collection. This was just a touch on the cheaper side because it's from Tilda's, you know, range that they reprint. I bought it from the Cotton Patch. And I did need, I think, 5 meters of it, but I have given myself a good allowance, and I had quite a bit left over. I've given myself a good allowance at all sides so I can trim it back, and of course I'll save the scraps from the back. In terms of basting my quilts, I use a mixture of 505 spray and then pins. When I'm just quilting on the machine, I will just use the 505 spray, but I find that with the hand quilting, that isn't enough security in itself. You need the pins as well, or perhaps just the pins, because you are handling it that much more, and yeah, it just takes you a lot longer, doesn't it? When I quilted the campervans, I started with the first 2 rows and then I worked my way up. There's only 4 rows to it. I've quilted the main centre of the quilt first. I did a few flowers. I told myself that when I finish one campervan, I'll do the flowers on the end of the row. That didn't go beyond the first row, so I've still got the borders left to do, but I've left them unquilted for now because if I need to adjust and smooth out the front or the back, I can do that because the borders are still not quilted down. I've set myself up a little thread box. So the threads that I'm using is Gutermann hand quilting thread, and this is Gutermann's specific thread for hand quilting, and it has a nice coating to it. I don't know how else to describe it other than a waxy coating, but nothing comes off. It's not waxy feeling. It's like just coated, and it is a very, very nice thread. So I bought those in a mixture of colours. We've got the cream for the background, green, pink, a yellow, a lilac that I already had that goes wonderfully, a red, and a blue. And these 6 or 7 threads have been working brilliantly for me. They blend in with most of them, they stand out when I need them to, and I've just really enjoyed it. But most of all, the texture that this hand quilting has created is just amazing. I've never hand quilted a quilt like this. In the past I've pretty much just either outlined, echo quilted basically, or when I've done something that's perhaps like a 9-patch quilt, I've just gone diagonally through the quilt. This quilt had a lot of open space as well as things to accentuate and echo quilt. So let me give you a bit of a close-up view. Just look at all that texture. So for the vans I decided to do 2 loops around the wheels. The red ones are in slightly more contrasting thread than the blue wheels, and for the windows you can't quite see because of all the texture, but I did kind of like a swoop in each of the windows. This is going to look amazing once it is all washed. And then for the actual body of the van, I've sort of gone round the individual elements. Probably that piece is the largest piece without much quilting on. And then this accent panel on the van, I've done these differently in different parts of the quilt. This one is horizontal. In others, I've done vertical lines, like this one here. And then in some of them I've even done diagonal lines. So I started at this diagonal point and then just went diagonally across. And then for the bottom bits I've just done in straight lines. And then around every element, well, around every van and trailer, I've done an echo quilting all the way around to the edge, just in the cream. And then the trailers have been quilted similarly. So we've got the wheels again, just with the circles. The flowers, I've done swoops in the centre of the flowers, and the leaves I've tried to accent them. And then just quilted in various horizontal or vertical lines. Here on this bit, I've then echoed around. And for the most part, I've tried to use coordinating threads where I can. So that brings me on to the background. As I said, there was a lot of empty space, and I really wanted to put something on that would add texture but also enhance the whole design, allowing the vans and things to really stand out. And I am so happy with the quilting that I've put on so far. So I decided to do a diagonal cross hatch, and these are 2 inches apart, and I tried to space them at 45. I tried to angle them at 45 degrees, and I'll share with you how I did that as well. And then, as I mentioned, I've still got the borders to do, so there'll be vertical lines coming down here, carrying on into the empty space here, and the flowers will just be quilted the exact same with like swoops on the inside. The flowers won't be outlined because then I think they'll come out too much into the border. Because of how busy the front is, you really can't see much of the quilting on the back at all. You can just see that there's texture added. I think that when it washes, you'll be able to maybe see it a bit more, but logically speaking, there is no pattern really other than the crosshatch that will show up. It really has been such a pleasure to hand quilt. So all I've got left with the crosshatch is this bottom row here. Looks like there's a little bit of lumpiness there, but that all works out absolutely fine with the quilting. So in terms of marking the quilt, I've actually been using a water-soluble marker. I had to do that when I was doing the quilting on the curves anyway, but definitely for the background here, I felt it important to mark it up just so I could get it accurate. And I do enjoy using a water-soluble marker. All I do at the end of the night is I just dab it with a wet cloth and the markings come off. Any markings that are left behind, they'll just come off the first time that I wash it once it's bound. Now this marker, I think it was probably maybe by Clover, but I prefer a marker. They're just like a felt tip, but I prefer a marker once it's dried up a little bit, once it isn't dispensing as much liquid, because when you first get these pens, they come out very hard, like the flow is quite fast, and you'll end up putting quite a lot of ink on your quilt top, and that's quite a scary thing. So what I like to do is at first don't press very hard at all, but then do use them even when they're drying out. You'll still get a good bit of use. Now for this quilting design, it was important that the crosshatch was at a 45-degree angle and that I was able to consistently check that throughout the quilt. So I've been using, this is a half square ruler that trims half squares. So at points in the quilt where there is a right angle, which isn't very often, it's only in these sashing parts, I've been putting that there and using it to draw one of the lines so that I know that it's at a true 45-degree angle. Because although you've got this 45-degree angle here on your ruler, you can't actually draw that. So it'd be okay to put there to check every once in a while, but you can't then use it to draw the 45-degree, if you see what I mean, because it's covered with plastic. So you need something like this that's got a set square basically. But because I've already got some markings here, I'm going to try and follow those markings down and using the 2-inch markings on my ruler. So I'm not only going to put my 2-inch line on a previous mark, I'm also going to check that it goes to the one up, just to double check, make sure we're not slanting as we go along, and just very lightly drag the pen down. And then I can see this line here needs to continue, so mark this line, again checking that we've got the right angle further up the ruler. And then this can continue even further as well, so it's great to have a large space that you can spread the quilt on. On the evenings when I'm doing this, I just lay it on the floor. And again with this line that I've just done, I'm going to check I've got the angle right and continue that marking as well. And then I just repeat this. I haven't been marking the whole quilt at once. I've just been marking what I know I can do in an evening. So it's just a little section really. That way you're not leaving the pen markings on the quilt too long. Now for the needles that I use, I usually opt for cotton darners in a size 9. This time I just picked up a milliner's needle and I think I'm using the size 9 that's on here. And I do tend to pull a long piece of thread just because I find the weaker spots in your hand quilting is going to be the risk of the knot. So I always try and pull a longer piece of thread and travel where I can. Now traveling is where you carry the thread. Just going to thread the needle. Now traveling with the thread is where you pass the needle and thread between the layers of the quilting to get from point A to point B. You're not having any type of loop or anything at the back and you can't see where you've been. It's like an invisible way to move through the quilt. Let me just pop my needle in and we'll get started. Now to simply hand quilt without a hoop, I take my non-dominant hand, I put it underneath the quilt, and at the moment I've got my hand open like this, but I'm going to close my hand with some of the quilt in there. So I'm just taking a pinch of the quilt just like that, and I'm going to hold that there, and I use my middle finger to guide the needle back up just as you would if you was using a hoop. And I do need a thimble. And the thimble that I use is a Clover leather thimble. I've recently switched to a size small because I found that the medium was stretching out too quick. And just as you would with regular hand quilting, you load up several stitches on your needle and pull through. I'm not the type of person who can stitch in any type of direction. When I'm hand quilting, I have to go from right to left. So that does mean I have to rotate my work quite a bit. But when it's on your lap and you're sitting on the sofa in front of the TV, it's really enjoyable. You can just bunch it up and twist it around, just like I'm going to now. Let me show you a close-up example of that travelling. So I've just stitched this line here, and now I need to come to here or here. I'm going to go to the nearest point, which is this way. So take your needle, and I always stop 1 stitch length less. So you're going to form another stitch, but you don't go through the back, and I'm going to angle my needle. And between the layers, I've got my finger underneath to make sure I can't feel the thread or the needle. And then just pull your needle up where you want to start stitching. Run your finger on the back just to make sure you can't feel the needle, and then completely pull through. And you just want to pull enough where your stitch is going to lay flat. You don't want to pull too much because you've got this line of thread here and it will bunch things up. And then just begin stitching as normal. Sometimes, especially if you're doing this type of work, you do need to strategically plan your route of stitching just so you can make sure you're not having to travel too far or tie off your ends too much. So if you can see here, I've stopped 1 stitch away from the end so that when I put my needle in here, I'm going to travel to wherever I want to travel, and that will form my last stitch. The logical place would be to come to here, but what I want to do is do all of the cross hatching that is going in this direction. So I'm actually going to travel across to here so that I can do this line, because if I just go here and come back, I might end up missing this line and perhaps this line. So I'm going to go through it strategically. I might actually do this little line here because that's all there is. It saves me having to come back over here to do this again. So I'll come to here, do this line, travel down to here, and then all the way back across. So just underneath. You don't want to travel too far, as long as your needle will go essentially. You can bunch up the quilt a little bit to get you there. So there we go. And then we can start stitching. So as I mentioned, I find this clover leather thimble brilliant. They don't last forever because it is leather. They do tend to wear out and they do stretch a little bit big, but if you wash them, they'll shrink back down. Just soak them in water. You can get, of course, more durable thimbles, plastic, metal ones, but this, what I really like about it is you can actually feel the needle a little bit more. So if you're someone who can't get on with a regular thimble, perhaps try a leather thimble, but just be warned, they don't last as long as the plastic or metal ones. I also really enjoy a silicone thimble. This offers no protection whatsoever from the needle. You might think it does, but it's a very false sense of security, and the needle will very easily go through this and get you very sharply. So what this actually does, it allows you to grip the needle. So I wear one on my index finger. I've got some for my thumb. I just rotate between finger and thumb. You can use them both together, but I feel finger and thumb is a little bit too clunky. And it just allows you to grip the needle so you're not straining your hand to pull the needle once you've formed the stitches, because that bit can be a little bit tricky to pull so many stitches through at once. You might have 4, 5 or even 6 stitches on your needle. So these two are the perfect duo. I'll leave the link to both of these down in the description box. I'll just leave an Amazon link just so you can see the type of product that they are. And of course, I always recommend shopping at your local quilt store if you can, but if not, get them on Amazon. I think an evening of hand quilting is in store. I'll come back to you when I'm doing the borders. I'll show you how I've been quilting the flowers and hopefully show you a little bit of the quilting on the borders as well. I've been working away on this hand quilting over the last couple of evenings, and I've just removed the last of the pen marks around the very bottom edge of the quilt. Now I'm about to start on the borders, but this last bottom row, the wheels end on the very bottom of the border, and I didn't know what to do about this little strip here, so I just haven't quilted it. I just thought you're not going to be able to get much of a crosshatch through there, and it doesn't need quilting because the border will be quilted right next to it. But I have, of course, done the quilting right down in the sash and in between, but just not that little strip next to the wheels. Now, slightly bad news on the thread front. Now, the thread that I was using that blends perfectly is colour 8 to 9. And as you can see, the spool is running very low. And I went to the shop to purchase the same colour, and I've actually purchased colour 9 to 8. So same digits, but different colour. So they are very slightly a different colour. So I didn't start using this on the main body of the quilt. I'll start using this on the border, just in case you can see any slightly different thread colour, but I really doubt that you will. Not by the time you open the spool and start stitching with it. It matches very nicely into the background. So for the border, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a stitch here that's 1/4 inch in. I'll just be following the seam allowance there, and I'll do the same at this bottom border. Someone in the comments of my shorts video said it'd be good to put a 3rd line in there. Now let me just draw it out so we can have a proper look. Let's get rid of some of these pins. So this way I can assess my options. So top and bottom, I won't mark this, I will literally just follow the seam, but this is just so we can have a look. This is what I imagined I would do. And then on this bit of the border, I'm just gonna do straight line in between those two. The pen is running very low, so I do apologise for that. So it just connects through there, which I think we've got a good space in there. That's 1.5 inches. That's 1.5 inches in between there, and that is 1.25 inches in between there. The crosshatch was 2 inches apart, so this is still closer than anywhere else in the quilt. But the lovely lady in the comments said to do a 3rd line on these borders, so somewhere in the middle. So that's going to be, let's say, about there. I think that's going to be too much and then won't match this border here. So this border, so that border being 1.5, and then this now being 0.5 inch apart, and that is denser than anywhere on the quilt, and I don't think I want that to match. If I wanted this to match, I would also need to do a 3rd line there in the middle, which that actually does look quite nice. Oh, I do like that, those 3 lines there. That looks nice. I think that's just a touch too much. Should I just do 1 line in the middle of the whole border? But then again, I like this separation here. I think I need to do this line here because it marks where my crosshatch ends elsewhere on the quilt. So up on the sides here, I think I do need to do a stitch here because the crosshatch is ending at the border. Whereas if I just did something in the middle. So shall I go for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines on the border? Here, this last row, I don't think I'll quilt anything on it. Or should I do here as well? Oh, I probably should do there as well, shouldn't I? And then my binding will be about there. This is going to be a lot of lines. I will need to mark these lines here. Those are going to have to be marked. I do like that with the 3 lines. I think that looks a lot better. So therefore, should I do the 3 lines here? Let's start stitching the borders, and I'll need to stitch the flowers as well. So while I'm here, let me show you how I mark the flowers. So this pen, I don't know if it's going to show up very well. I can't seem to find a fresh pen. I thought I had loads of these, but all I've been doing is just drawing a loop on myself. And they're not all even, as you can see. And then I just stitch that with a colour coordinating thread. On the ones in the main quilt, I've been doing a circle around the edges just to accent it, but I'm not going to do that on these ones because there'll be enough quilting with the horizontal lines. I couldn't even tell you when it was that I last filmed an update on the Campervan on the Campervan quilt. However, I am very, very nearly finished. I think I've just got one row of stitching to do in the very, very final border. I've done it in some places, so it's not around the entire quilt. If you can just see here in this border, that's the last stitch. That's the last stitch that I have to do all the way around, but in some places it is complete. But I'm holding it upside down. What I did notice though is I've missed a fairly big section of quilting on the crosshatch, and it's in one of the corners. Yes, it's in this corner. No, it's not that big. So I've just missed this bit of crosshatch in here, and I think in one direction, so about the length of a campervan, but just along the very top. So I need to go back and fill all that in. But oh my gosh, the texture on this quilt, I don't know if you'll even be able to see it. Oh, I just can't wait to get it finished, get the binding on and put it in the wash, because I know this is going to be the most crinkliest quilt that I've ever made. I'm just so in love with the quilting. And I've got my binding here, so it's a very, very small red and white stripe. I'm going to do it 3-inch binding, and I'm probably going to cut about 8 strips. I think I've got 1 metre there. That should roughly be enough. I never quite measure the binding. Sometimes I do if I've followed a pattern and it tells me what the finished quilt should measure. I'll work that out in number of strips. But I've gone rogue here and put that flower border on, so who knows, and I'm not going to measure the quilt. Although I don't know when I last filmed a segment for this video, I do know that it has so far taken me 46 days to hand quilt the quilt. So I'm thinking by the time I'm finished and got the binding on, it'll be somewhere closer to 50 days. So never feel guilty if your project takes a little bit longer. I can't believe it actually is that long, almost 2 months. I think it worked it out to be just under 7 weeks, so it's quite a long time, isn't it? I've probably worked on it at least an hour every evening. Sometimes more, but I think there's been 2 days where I've actually dedicated quite a bit of time to doing it, but because of the way I quilted around the campervans and all the individual elements, there was a lot of twisting and turning of the quilt, so that does slow you down, especially if you have a dog that curls up on it. Then you can't twist it how you need to, so you just have to stop quilting so the dog can go to sleep. Yeah. So I'm really excited to be getting this finished. I literally just put the quilt on the ironing board so I could carry on speaking with you, and she has seen her opportunity. If her crochet blanket isn't enough, she needs the quilt. And here is the quilt completely finished. I had little faith in myself, didn't I, from the beginning of the video, that I would manage to get the binding on this week. I am so pleased with it, not only because I absolutely adore the look of the quilt, but because of the confidence this quilt actually gave me in myself and my own abilities. And I am excited to take on my next new big challenging quilt, whenever that may be. I am also going to be washing this quilt, so I'll be sharing some images and videos of it once it's washed. I'll put that on my YouTube shorts and Instagram accounts and things, so you can find all of the links to those in the description box below, and now also on Facebook. So until the next time I see you, you take care and happy quilting.